the multiple crew, which is a difficult task, but it's a very productive. I would say that also I'm a president of WISTA Hellas. We have our WISTA International president here. And recently I was also, I became executive board member of International. So indeed, the recent study, this I have to read because I'm not good in remembering statistics. Okay, so indeed the recent study, which was conducted by McKinsey Global Institute in 2015, brought out potentiality for improving the GDP to a higher level. The report stresses out that if women, who account for half of the world's working force, do not achieve their full economic potential, the global economy will suffer.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you to Caspian Week for hosting us. My name is Souleïma. I was born and raised in Morocco, and today I'm the CEO and the founder of a fintech company called Komgo, active in the blockchain space, in the commodity space. I have a very strong financial background, having spent 18 years with the French bank Société Générale that I left last year to launch this company. Why am I here today? I think it's if you look at the financing world, the banking industry and the IT industry, this women in leading position is still a very big topic, and compared to when I started working almost 20 years ago, I don't think it's moving in the right directions, and we were comparing our industries before. Banking is becoming less and less friendly for women in leading positions, obviously, and I don't even mention the IT dimension here. I was also very fortunate as an African woman to be able to do what I did, and I think what you mentioned before is key, giving back and supporting others. And being a role model is a very important motivation too.
Thank you very much. My name is Maria Koteneva. I'm coming from Moscow. I have studied the best university, the University of Foreign Affairs, and studied international economy. I have studied also later at the Humboldt University in Berlin, Germanistic. But I have married a diplomat, so that's why my life was in between business and looking for jobs, because their diplomat life is consistent of 3 and 4 years period, where you have to bring it together, family life and business life. And being the wife of the ambassador, I was the first lady from our country, and it was also a great thing in leadership, I think, for women. And 2008, my husband and me were the founders of a new conference, a new generation, Russia, Germany, and now it is a really great platform for leadership in Europe and more, of course, for Germany and Russia. I would be happy to say later a little bit more about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon from me as well. I'm Katerina Stathopoulou. Thank you for the invitation and to Caspian Week. I am from Athens, Greece. I've been in shipping for the past 34 years, in shipping finance for the past 34 years. I've been in shipping all my life, as I am the daughter, the proud daughter of a ship's captain. Finance is my passion, and shipping as well. I have been on the board of WISTA International for 6 years, stepped down this year, and Angie joined. I am a member of WISTA Hellas. I am a mentor to the young generation. I am a shipping finance lecturer for Institute of Chartered Shipbrokers, and I am very enthusiastic about the topic, and I am here, and it's important for me because I believe that we need to be role models, and for everything else the previous lady said, we need to be role models and take this forward, as I am also, and finally, the proud mother of 2 young ladies. So they are now in the business industry, just launching their own careers. So we need to hand over the baton and help them pave the way for a better, smaller gender gap. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Hua Fan. I'm from Beijing, China. I grew up there and then studied mathematics in college. After college, I went to US and then get my PhD in finance. And then I spent about like 10 years at Goldman Sachs, running their global risk modeling group. And then 2007, went back to China, and then later on joined the Chinese Sovereign Wealth Fund, CIC. CIC was founded then, and then so we were building it up like a startup. Right now, CIC manages about $900 billion US dollar, where I'm more responsible for is the $250 billion overseas investments. Why the women's leadership topic is quite important, I think I can quote a story. Recently, in the Chinese social media, which is called WeChat, currently it has about 1 billion people logging in every month to use it. So on this WeChat thing, and then there was this popular message, and then talking about Chinese women work more than French men. And then the story was like this. Well, everybody knows, like China has this higher GDP rate, which is something come to 6.6%, and then that comes. That will give credit to the labor participants rates. For the Chinese men, the rate was like 90%, one of the highest, joined by Philippines, Mexico, Brazil. But everybody probably didn't know that much. The difference coming from women. Women participation rate is about 70%, which is like 10% higher than the second to next, which is Canada, which comes about 60%. So I think we have a lot to gain if we can all encourage more women to work and then more women to become leaders.
Thank you. Well, I don't know if you heard well, but Dr. Hua Fan is responsible for $250 billion of investment. So I want to ask her, when the majority of women that experience the glass ceiling, the being discriminated just for being a woman, they tend to demotivate themselves and stop aspiring to climb the corporate ladder. What happened, what personal experience you had that kept you going and kept you motivated to seek for the C-suite?
Well, I worked in both U.S. and in China. So when I was with Goldman, it definitely was the case with, I felt like there is some kind of a glass ceiling, but I still sort of try to do my best, and at least I was able to become recognized and then running 20 plus people. But still, I guess maybe because I sort of implicitly feel there's this glass ceiling, and then I went back to go back to China and then join the Chinese firm, and then where I felt like the ceiling is a little bit higher. So there, we were able to build up teams from scratch, and then doing well in the fund management industry. I think, when it comes to me, I felt like you just go ahead and do it your best, and then I think if you do a good job, it will be recognized. But on the other hand, the training, at Goldman was helping quite a bit, because there were like women's leadership trainings at Goldman, which I think I benefited quite a lot. There are definitely techniques that we could use to become more recognizable by others.
Thank you. How about you?
What triggered me? Well, first of all, I have to say, I don't think it's only a gender issue. I think it's also a character issue. You need to want it, and you need to have the character to be able to go after it. And growing up, I have to say, I was an athlete in a male-dominated sport. I did judo for 20 years, and I was an international athlete. So what we did was train and go there to win. That's the mentality I had growing up. And this was the only way for me to continue the sport I loved. I couldn't take second best. And also growing up, during training, I also used to fight with men, and it didn't matter. Other weight categories, it didn't matter, you just had to do it. So I think this mentality spilled over into my life after sports. I am quite ambitious as a character, and I couldn't imagine going to work every day and not having an ambition or not having a higher goal. So I think it's also a big part of your character, and it's okay if you don't have that character trait. It's absolutely okay. But I think it takes that both in men and in women.
Thank you. Aleksandra?
I'd actually like to pick up a little bit on what you said in terms of character, but also and some of the other things that have been mentioned in terms of role models. So actually, during my formative schooling years, I guess, if you will, between the ages of 10 and 18, I spent in an all-girls school. And so for me, that was significant insofar as all of the leadership positions, whether it was president of the student body, the captain of the soccer team, what have you, those were all women, and I assumed some of those positions as well. So as I progressed through my personal and professional life, for me that was a very powerful young impression, and it was impossible that a woman couldn't lead this or lead that, because I saw it when I was 10 years old. So I think it's also those early impressions and early role models that really, for me, was quite formative in my career also going forward. Which is not to say that we should be shipping girls off to all-girls schools, mind you. But those early impressions, I think, are important.
Are very important, yes.
Thank you. Angie?
I was very fortunate. I did not go through gender bias. Working for a family business, I was very fortunate to be given the chance to prove myself. So they threw me in the deep. So the only way to make it was through hard work, earn people's respect, go on board the vessels and see how people live, what are their problems, go to the Philippines, go to Russia, go to wherever, multicultural crew, stay late at work, climb the ladder while the vessel is in the anchorage. This is proving yourself that you can make it. So it's through being persistent, patient, and hard work. I think it's both, and for man and for woman, a glass ceiling. It doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman. Thank you.
Maybe to add to what has just been said, culture and education. I come from a family where women have always showed me and told me that I could do whatever I wanted in my life. And this was a huge opportunity and gave me a lot of trust in myself. Teams, for me, everything comes from the team, and I have been pushed a lot by my teams to be there today. I was the one that was there to represent them, so very important. And obviously, I fully agree with what you said in terms of hard work, in terms of passion, in terms of commitment. I don't completely agree on the fact that it's the same thing for men and women. Definitely, it's not the case. I mean, coming from the finance industry, in finance, some women work night and day and they never go anywhere, and some men don't, and they just promote it. So I really saw this big difference in the banking industry, definitely, and I think it's important to I mean, there's still a lot of challenges there, definitely.
Thank you.
Maria? Well, I come from Moscow, and I had one of the best Moscow schools, and just to you to understand, we were 40 in the class, and there were 26 girls. So, of course, well, by the way, it's, well, the modern situation in Russia, when we have 20 million more women than men, and we have, for every 7 women, we have only 6 men. So it's the modern situation, and you just have to understand it. Then if you are so many, you have to go through this. Yes, you have to be bold, you have to have the strong character just to come out of and to be the better, to be better than those men who also try to get the same position in business life. So, well, for me, well, it's an interesting question, and I think every country has its peculiarities, and you told us, well, because, for example, you said that in China most of the women are working, and this percentage is larger than the rate in the world. The rate in the world is 40%. And in the Soviet Union we had 94% the rate. Absolutely
Better than us.
Absolutely. Well, difficult.
They on purposely
yes,
missed that.
Yes, difficult to understand it. But today, it's also 90% in Russia because, I just don't want to speak so long, but we can come to it afterwards.
Okay. They've more or less covered my part, but what I would like to say is my challenge. I was very fortunate. My challenge not to come from the business industry, but to come from very early years, and that was my culture and my family, unbelievably enough. Not anymore. I am Greek-born, but American raised and educated. So at the time when I was 18 years old, and I told my parents I'm going to be in the finance sector and in the shipping finance sector, coming from a shipping family and a dad on the ships, everybody said, no, you cannot do that. It is totally male-dominated, which was the case. Now we are actually talking about mid-80s, okay? So they said, no, you can't. And to me, no, you can't has always been to my character a very red flag. So I was always, so it is character. It is, I cannot accept I can't do something. You need to tell me how I can do it, and I will try my best. And I won't be always the best, but that's okay as well. So once I got through to over the hurdle of my family, proving to them that I can do, and I can do more than that, then within the business, I was very fortunate. So I had good role models from the men. I had support in the shipping, in the finance sector, which I agree with you, it is very difficult, within a shipping company and then within the banking sector. And then I decided to jump boat and become an advisor in the shipping finance sphere for the past 18 years, which I face hurdles every day, meaning 34-year of track record, and I still have to prove myself every day to my clients. But my male colleagues also have to do that as well. So it is character, it is passion, it is wanting to go forward. And yes, I agree, you do not need to have it. It's okay. So everybody has their own ways and wants in going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're going to go with Souleïma in the center. So now we have to propose solutions. What do you think countries and companies have to do, have to implement to really make a difference? And what are you doing yourself to make a difference?
To be very transparent, I'm not a big fan of positive action and positive measures to make this happen. I'm a very strong believer in driving teams by performance and behavior. Having said that, and having said what I said before, I think nevertheless some things have to be done. Education, training, you mentioned some before. Mentoring, sponsorship, role models, these are things that can help a lot. Recruitment policy, being sure that you gather enough CVs from all genders before choosing, and paying a specific attention to women in all the complexity their life can carry. For example, I have somebody in my team today who comes from India, from not the best social layer of India, and she's an amazing performer, and if I wouldn't be helping her, she wouldn't be in the company anymore because of her cultural background. So this extra attention you can bring to your stuff as a manager, I really try to do that as much as I can for women.
That's amazing. Angie, how about you?
Okay, being the president of WISTA Hellas, okay, because I think this is more important, no. That's okay. It takes too long. Next time you invite us. What we do is the following. Okay, WISTA stands for Women International Shipping and Trading Association. Of course, Despina will tell you more. She's the international president, so I don't want to take her over. So what we do is the following. We have almost more than 280 members in Greece. We are the second NWA. The US is the first one. We have monthly gatherings, and we talk about shipping, various aspects. We do a lot of forums, which brings a lot of people from shipping come together, and it's a brainstorming. And we have also WISTA International worldwide, where we exchange ideas. So what we try to do is to try to educate our people, exchange ideas. Definitely, we try to assist them. We're not a place that you find, you come to find a job, right? But we try to assist our members. So I think this is a way of changing the minds and assisting and reinforcing the woman in.
Thank you, Angie. How about you, Aleksandra? What are you doing to make a difference?
Sure. Well, I'm in the politics world, and a challenge that we have among many is that within the policies world, women work to a certain point, and then when they're family and so on, then they'll either take an extended leave or just drop out completely, and then they struggle to come back. And many conversations about that attribute that, for instance, to the challenge of being a child or a caregiver and a breadwinner. But there's actually an interesting study that came out about a few years ago, done by an Oxford colleague of mine, and she surveyed women between the ages of 30 and 40 who were leaving the workforce, and she looked into why that was. And it challenged the assumptions of having to balance work and life. And that study found that most women between the ages of 30 and 40 who are leaving the workforce in the policy sphere and others are leaving because of insufficient pay and a lack of learning and opportunities for professional development. And that study found that men between the ages of 30 and 40 are leaving for more or less the same reason. So I think the challenge for organizations is really to pay fairly and to provide opportunities for training and role models and some of the things that have been mentioned before. I think, interestingly, if we're thinking specifically about millennial women, the millennial generation is the purpose generation, so on and so forth, insofar that the passion or the drive for work is not necessarily just the paycheck, but something more meaningful. And so I think for organizations, the challenge is to create that kind of work environment. And so I bring on many young research assistants, many young analysts, and it's really about building up and supporting the best and the brightest and opening doors for them. Because the challenge, I think, in the policy world and others as well, is that women generally don't have access to many informal networks as men still do in terms of opportunities to meet mentors or meet people that might put them in the right place at the right time, so to speak. So opening those kind of doors is, I think, also hugely important for everybody.
Mentoring is very important.
Yeah. And what do you think?
Well, I'll talk about my company first, what we do, and then I can talk a little bit about what we're doing on the international level. But when I reached the C-level of my company, I was not initially the CEO, I was the CFO. It gave me an opportunity to promote not only women, but also younger people, because we were quite an aging, and actually it's a group of companies, so it was a quite aging group of companies. Today, I'm happy to say that we're approximately 50-50, and also for women in the mid management levels. On the senior management levels, we have 30% women, a little bit over 30, which is not 50, but it's much more than what it used to be a few years ago, so we're getting there. And we're also very mindful of how we pay people, so people get the same salary for the same job. So this is a rule. And I have seen through the years that you don't have to tell people that you have to respect your female colleagues or you have to promote them. If it comes from the top of the company and it's ingrained within the culture, then it comes naturally. When it comes to WISTA International, well, we are a 45-year-old organization, a global organization. And to be honest, until a few years ago, we didn't have the opportunities to promote women in shipping as much as we do today. Last year, the IMO, it's the International Maritime Organization, and it's the UN agency for shipping. They approved us for consultative status, which shows how much perception is changing in the shipping industry. And actually this year, the Maritime Day theme is called Empowering Women in the Maritime Community. We have seen such a change in only a few years. We have major shipping companies all over the world calling us and say, come in and help us improve our diversity rates, mentor the women that we believe are going higher. Our role as WISTA is not to tell the industry what to do, but our role is to provide the industry with the resources and the tools it needs to push us towards true gender diversity. And it's working. We see education, we see mentoring. Education is a big component, I believe. If part of the question is if we believe in quotas, personally I don't. I believe in meritocracy, so I don't believe in quotas, but I believe in supporting women and supporting young children by allowing them to have ambition, by inspiring them, by providing them the education to go places.
I would like to add here, if I may, that in Greece at least, I mean, on board vessels now, you do see quite a few women. So this is a great change. We've seen a woman captain, Iakinthi, on board a tanker vessel. I think in Japan also they had now a woman captain.
Yes.
So at least in shipping, we can see that things are changing.
Yes.
We're all considering of putting women on board the vessel. Okay, it takes time. There are a lot of things that you have to fix in order to have a healthy and productive environment, but we do see it changing in shipping. I mean,
That is great news. And Maria, what's special about Moscow? What's Moscow doing in terms of empowerment? And what are you doing on your own?
Yeah, I have already said that we have the equality in education in our country, but what I really love to say that the sociological tests show us that the women know that already, that the society is developing faster. So, for example, there are 90% of women in our country are absolutely sure of it. They know that they have the same possibilities than the other gender. And at the same time, this development shows us that they are also sure that they can get in their profession a very good position. Almost 76% of women in our country are now absolutely sure of that. And also they think that they have the right to have the same remuneration as men. And it is also, well, the absolutely new development in our country. I know the banking sector is not the best in the world if we take this question of equality, and but it is an international problem, and I think maybe with the time it would be solved, and there would be more women on there as CI4s, and well, in any way, we have now women also in Russia, in such closed professional society as diplomacy. We have many women ambassadors now, also from our country. So it is also a development. A nice development.
Thank you.
women are more flexible and more diplomatic, I would say. That's why.
Yes, they are.
Yes,
Right.
and maybe one sentence more. Women are working very hard, you know, and
Multitask.
we're working through the whole life hard in our families, in our profession, and men who are leading the companies, they know it. And sometimes they take women because they know that they are hard workers.
We're taking over.
No.
And how about Greece? And what you're doing personally?
Well, Greece and Angie covered what we do with WISTA. I believe that Greece is going forward on the education level. And I personally believe that education and transparency for breaking the stereotypes into younger generation education, to start from basics and allow the children to think as a culture that you can do more things. I mean, if you have a girl say, I would like to be an airplane pilot, and they would go for it, okay? So we're trying to break the stereotypes through education, and within the shipping industry, we are working hard to empower all the ladies and women through education, mentoring, and networking. Now, in my company, we are a small company, but we have a 50-50 analogy of women and men, and we now recruit, or we have been recruiting, younger generation, which we've been assisting to grow. So the management level and the experience we have, because as advisors, it is it's a well-rounded experience to give forward for somebody to grow into the company and to be able to be productive. So we are now taking on new generation, and we are very flexible with the women, with me as an example, to assist them in the working hours and the work-life balance. So I raised 2 children as a single parent, not always being in the office, but being very effective. So that can be done, and I think if companies put that into their policy, that will definitely assist the whole issue.
Thank you very much. And I'm very curious to learn what's China doing in this respect.
First, I would echo with the education perspective. When we were growing up, we were told, well, women hold half of the sky. That's what Chairman Mao said before. So we didn't have that much restrictions of whatever things we couldn't be. In terms of the school, and right now we started seeing like elementary school girls have higher scores than men, and then move on to high school, and now even college. So in some of the admission offices, sometimes they have to adjust the admission scores lower for men, which is somehow probably unheard of many years ago. But still, we still have the challenges. The higher you move, and the little woman, the few women you will see. So one thing I think people still do is, at certain levels, they will require a certain number of women on board, or maybe on the political arrangements. I know it's not perfect, but still, I think it's a step. Maybe we could get some people recognized that way. In terms of what I did, at least I hire more women, but it's not because I just like women. I think they are better producers, and then they provide very good diversification in asset management. As most of you probably know, diversification is the only free lunch in asset management, and then having more women on the actually we produce pretty good long-term results. And then we do see there are mid-level managers saying, they might be having kids and then missing for like a few months. And then some people say, we don't hire women. But actually, my own experience is that they tend to be more loyal and stick longer, and it turned out to be great for our team. So I would encourage everybody to do the same.
Great, thank you very much. Now, this is an interesting topic. Often toxic workplace cultures become perpetuated in traditionally male-dominated environments, where performance and commitment are measured by the hours put into the job, the time that the employee leaves the office, the late hours of the night that work emails have been sent, or the weekends that are spent working. This situation creates an artificial expectation and false performance indicators that are impossible to manage around other family commitments. And often this falls into women who are proven to carry the mental load of the family. How do you consider the future of the workplace would impact the gender gap? We start here to here.
Okay. Well, I would say that the role of the family in society is hugely important. In some cultures, you see bigger families that have big support from the family around them. And then in some other cultures, the family is really a very small core and they get state support, let's say. But I think in societies that have an increasingly smaller core as a family, it's very important to promote ways to move away from this toxic environment. I would say, promoting ways of sharing this work at home is one of the best things. It's not only about working late hours, but it's having the ability to share the workload at home. And some countries are already embracing this. And for example, I know in Sweden, the state gives collective parental leave days, and the couple can decide how to split it among themselves. Society is changing, and more men want to be more involved in their families' lives, in their children's lives. And I think this is something we should encourage and promote. As long as the responsibilities are at home become increasingly shared, then I think women will also have the opportunity to raise their profile and get more opportunities in the workplace.
That's great, because it's very complicated to spend long hours and then taking care of your family, and then you have to take care of your husband, then you have to take care of the kids and all the responsibilities, and then you have to network, right? So when would you find the time, right?
But I do want to emphasize that we should not diminish, but we should not underestimate the need of the men as well to be close to their families, and I think that's the key.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the good thing about women empowerment, that men also benefit. Because, we live in this culture where men cannot cry, men cannot be with their children. There's also a feminine side of men that you can express when we embrace women empowerment. What do you think about this, Aleksandra?
Yeah, I'd actually like to pick up on that and maybe somewhat controversially push back a little bit on it. Insofar as I'm not necessarily sure that it's exactly a gender issue. And I say this as an example. There was, back in 2012, Anne-Marie Slaughter, who was very high up in the foreign policy department under the Obama administration, and very successful professor, and I believe she still is at Princeton. She wrote an article for the Atlantic magazine that was entitled, "Why Women Still Can't Have It All." And that kind of catapulted her into the spotlight on this issue, and she brought up many of the matters that we're discussing here. And shortly thereafter, there was another article in the Atlantic written by a gentleman, I don't recall who, but ex-military, very successful. And the title of his piece was "Men Still Can't Have It All Either." And in it, he went on to describe the trade-offs that men also have to make. More time in the office means less time at home with their families, with their wives, so on and so forth. So the burden might fall a little bit more to women in some cases, but I don't see it as a gender issue. In terms of what can be done, I agree with the societal change and that it's progressing in the right direction. And I think also within the workplace, we're seeing changes as well. More companies are starting to embrace flex time or work from home, and focusing more on the actual quality of the deliverable rather than how many hours someone clocks at his or her desk. And I think over time, as well as we start to see the emergence of this kind of gig economy, if you will, that may give both women and men the flexibility to arrange their professional lives and their personal lives in a way that are kind of healthy and holistic for both.
Thank you. Angie?
Okay, maybe I'm repeating myself, but as I said before, shipping, has traditionally been a dominating male. But as I said before, this is changing. On board the ships, there's no 9 to 5, okay? And things are very particular. For example, even if you're at shore, they can call you Christmas Eve, they can call you Easter, the time that you're with your family and having Easter. But we've seen that with digitization, and things are changing because now women can be more, it's more easy for the woman to be involved and on shore and on the ships. So what I would really say is that on board the vessels, the regulations are very, very strict. The rest hours of all the crew, and all recorded by the master. So digitalization, as I said before, is transforming business landscapes and the world of work, and redefining the boundaries of production, consumption, and distribution. The shipping industry is currently facing a new challenge: modern ships, automation, highly automated. Most systems are components will be linked with the near future to the internet. So bottom line, I would say that technological advancements will bring to the shipping industry many changes, and this will be this will help bridge the gap with men and women.
Thank you, Andy. And Souleïma, I think in your industry, it's particularly toxic, because it's very, how many hours you worked, if you work in the weekend. How do you deal with that?
I have been into a very toxic department during 6 years, actually, and and it was my first job, my two first jobs, and I did make the conscious choice not to apply to those rules and to leave the office when I was fed up, when I couldn't be productive anymore, when I needed some fresh air. And believe me that it was kind of a tough period for me, and I had to prove even more because I was doing that. So I was more challenged than the other people because I was doing that. But there are two different things I think we're mentioning here. There's those pure toxic workplace, and I think there are less and less places like that today.
Yes.
Because of all you've mentioned, because today I'm in a blockchain-based company. One of the keywords of blockchain is decentralization. Obviously, everybody works from a decentralized space in our environment. So things are changing. But there's another thing. It's when you reach to the C level, you have to be very conscious of the fact that as a leader of a company, you need to be everywhere, and you said it both at the beginning. You have to desire this position and to take it only if you are ready to be everywhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if you don't think of it before, it's a disaster after. I mean, I'm never at home. I took this position knowing that I would never be at home. My daughters knew it. My husband knew it. It was a collective decision in the family. And if you want to be a leader and if you want to perform in such roles, you have no other choice. And it's not a question of toxic or not. It's a question of driving businesses, that's all. This is what I can add to that.
Maybe we can say that you have to decide which are your priorities, right?
Yeah.
We're not all the
And
same.
priorities change as the family moves on. And then, it's a balance.
And clearly, in my case, it was very important for me not to have my children raised by somebody else.
Exactly.
Except by my husband or myself. And my husband did a conscious choice to stop working, and he's managing the family today. And he would have not done that, I would not be here today, definitely.
If I may add, if you don't have the support of the family, it's a lost case. For example, the seafarers in general, right? They need full support, and I'm sure Katerina understands that because her father was a master. So if you don't have the support from your family behind, let's say from the wife, who is a supporter behind, taking care of the kids, and she's the one who deals with the finance, by the way, at least in the Greek society, and making good, economic budget and supporting and helping the husband who's on board the ship and feels very lonely, and I'm sure he's homesick, but she's the one who supports him to be able to continue. So I think the family support is the most important issue.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So how do you deal with your kids? When you said priorities change, what do you mean by that?
Yes. First of all, what I'd like to say, and I will get to that, because to me it was the most important choice I made, priorities between my children and the speed of my progress in business. So what I want to say is that once you have a family and once you know what you want to do, and wherever your life brings you, because I started off as a married couple raising kids. At some point in time, I got divorced. Okay, it happens, that's life. And then in the Greek culture, the burden for the kids is on the mother, okay, which is changing, but it's still on the mother. So the father did not want to participate that much. So then I had to have a career choice of how fast would I be progressing against being 100% with my children. And I believe I strike the balance with the assistance of two factors. My family, my parents, who, as I said, were the first that I had to break the glass ceiling with them, but they were very big supporters at that point of helping me with my children and not anybody else outside the family, for me to move on, but be with them as well, and my company that allowed me the time to be able to be with my children and at their activities, while also being effective to what I need to do. And to that helped technology. So I could be at a parent-teachers conference with my BlackBerry answering emails while I'm in the line waiting to speak. And in fact, I was the mother that was always, everybody knew that I was everywhere and all the time, but always with a headphone and always typing, but always attentive and present. So that made the children, independent, because they had to spend a lot of time on their own as well, for me to be able to network and progress. And as they were growing up, our priorities shifted. So I could be more away, although they were still in high school, than I was while they were in primary school. I could travel. Once they went to the university, I was free. I have no resemblance to a Greek mother. So they just left on their own, and on the same day I would be flying for a WISTA international meeting when my elder daughter left. On the same day, 2 hours later. So she went off to college, I went off to do my work, and they were all happy. And the younger one was home, staying at home alone to finish high school for a week, or go to school. So it can be done, and I feel technology is helping us more now towards that direction. So I was able to do it when technology was not that progressive, and it's just a short time. By the way, my children are 21 and 23, if anybody's wondering. But now it's helping us more. So priorities do shift, but we need to be, as a person and as a woman and as a mother, very clear on who we are and what we want. And once we get, one thing up, I had a priority list, and I am now at the top of the list. Okay?
Amazing. So I guess you can have it all, but not at the same time.
Exactly. And you need to be patient.
Exactly.
And aware about the consequences and the energy it takes.
Yes, of course, thank you. But you need to understand that once you choose that, and then if you start, if you're tired, you just move back a little bit.
I would like to add here, if I may, for example, Filipinos, right? Filipino family, many times, I have difficulty finding a master or chief engineer, and it's something very, very urgent. What do? I call the wife, and I say, please, persuade your husband to go on board. I'll send you flowers, I'll do anything, and it happens.
Yeah.
So
You're absolutely right. We have to respect the timing
Exactly.
of our life.
Yeah.
And Mary has an interesting story here, because as being the wife of a diplomat, she had to have a lot of flexibility and ability to change constantly. How do you took that to your personal life?
Well, I think it was very important what you said, because if you don't get the help of the family, and in my case, my parents helped me a lot, and I have also a wonderful husband who was always on my side, and it was a wonderful balance in the family, and that you need just to go further in your life to find your way. And in any way, of course, leadership is very important, and but the consequences are like that. You can't get everything in your life. So, for example, it's also a large problem for women in Russia, because the historic period shows us that the Russians wanted the Russian women always wanted a family. That's why we married so early. It was, the family is really an important thing, and I hope it stays like that. But the right balance is, our challenge today, because everybody wants, of course, a very nice position in their business life, and at the same time, a nice family and good children, and that is difficult to bring together. In my case, I was just as I said, I had to look for jobs every 3-4 years, and for me it was just a nice thing to get a job, to have the possibility to do something not only in the family, though I love my family, of course, and I think it's also the way of just understanding what a woman can do, and we have so many qualities in us that we can just have the possibility to show them, to bring them to other people, and to help maybe other young girls and young women to understand that all the world is inside. We are the world. We're just opening ourselves. We just have to open the doors and not close them. Exactly. That's the way to do it. And back to the problems we have, maybe there is also a nice sentence to it. We can say we can be in love, we have to come in love with this, not with the solution, but with the problem. Then, if we love it, then we love our place where we work. And if we are looking for work, then we don't have to say, oh, I like this place. No, but we have to say, I love it. And then it is another atmosphere. And maybe well, I think it is a very important thing. Please listen to me. Love is a very important thing in our life, not in our private lives, but also in our business life. Because when we are having this area of love around us, also to the people who are working with us, then it is a very special atmosphere, and not anymore, well, just take a few steps to the other people around you.
But if you don't put effort and love and passion, Greeks are very famous for the passion.
For passion, yes, and we're very
You're never
passionate.
good in anything, right? And our example, by the way, for women is Bubulina. My friend here told me, do you know Bubulina?
Yes, of course.
You know, that was our example.
You know, this is important because work, it's not only for remuneration. Work is also to do something that you're passionate about. So you can be a spouse, you can have your family, but you can also spend some time, even philanthropic time. It doesn't have to be something that gives you money, but gives you the pleasure of contributing to society and of doing something that you love and keeps you passionate about. And here, it's the, Dr. Hua's example is also, you know, interesting because she's married and she has 2 kids and she's not only surviving but thriving in the C-suite. I don't really know how she does that, you know. It costed my marriage, so.
Well, I also made a choice. I have 2 kids, and then I choose to send them to boarding schools at a very young age. It turned out to be great for both of us. Because in China, it's quite common for parents to helping kids with their homeworks. You know, Chinese have lots of homeworks, and then the teachers even just send like a direct homeworks to the parents, helping them. I mean, ask them to help with their children. And then I thought about it and I said, when I grow up, I didn't have my parents helping me with the homeworks. I think if the kids are motivated enough, they should be able to handle themselves. So I made a choice. I sent them to boarding school and then I told them, you guys just take care of yourself. And then I can be with my work. And then it turned out to be also helping in the sense, I mean, maybe we have less conflict between me and my kids during the weekdays, and then we can spend more like a quality time on the weekends. Other advice would be, I guess the younger generation have their own way to communicate. Sometimes if we're both at home, and they might be just in their rooms and not interacting with us. But on the other hand, maybe when I'm traveling, I can still like text them and then interact with them. And they tell me lots of things just on the WeChat. So it's more about quality and then less about like a FaceTime. Same for work, probably give more like for results instead of like FaceTime at work.
Well, that's true. Like quality is more important than quantity. I do agree with that. And well, they say that for women to be empowered, you need to empower yourself first, because we have a lot of self-esteem issues since we're very young, because we are discouraged from leadership roles early on. So they tell us, you know, the only thing that matters is to find a husband, or you only have to care about your makeup, don't worry about math, you know. So I would like to know, how do you dealt with your self-esteem and how do you dealt with your empowering to become the woman that you're today?
Well, I guess I didn't do that much special things, but I still would emphasize what the sort of the training courses I took at Goldman. First of all, you probably need to choose it yourself. And like, it's not like in Chinese schools, I mean, all the classes or things are assigned to you. if you are sort of eager to learn things, and then you probably have to take a step yourself first. But then at Goldman, there were things like trainings for new employees, for the project managers, for the new managers, and then later on for senior management. And then step by step, and then there are sort of things, I mean, that could be helpful, and it helped me understand myself and also understand my manager's view. So, I mean, thinking from the other one's perspective will be quite important. And then managing other people's expectation could be quite important, as we were talking about the work-life balancing. I mean, don't make people think you're supposed to work really long hours to start with, I would say.
Thank you. So, Katerina, so you experienced the glass ceiling very young with your family telling you you were crazy, that was impossible.
I should have been married at 18. My mother had the husband out the door, and I jumped the window on the back of the house, literally. Yep.
So tell us more about it, and tell me, how did you, I mean, did you have a role model, or who inspired you to keep going?
Actually, a man. My first employer, who at the age of 20, I knocked on the door of a very big shipping company and pitched myself at the age of 20 again for assistant CFO. I was still in the university. So he was a banker from Citibank. He had come out of, he was resident vice president of Citibank at that time, head of shipping, and he was CFO of a Greek, very big Greek shipping company. And here we were in shipping in the 80s in the big crisis. So owners were taking on ex-bankers to help them resolve their financial issues. And here's a little 20-year-old knocking on the door for the position of assistant CFO, and pitched for it, literally. And no experience, nothing. I was just studying financial management. I had 2 more years in the university. 1-hour interview. I've never had a more intense interview since then. And at the end of the interview, he says, "Where do you see yourself in 5 years?" Can you imagine what I answered? His chair.
Bravo, Katerina.
I said, "I'm going to be sitting in your chair in 5 years." And he said, "You're hired."
That's good.
I said, "Thank you. You're not afraid of your chair." You know, we started kidding with each other. And he says, "No, because in 5 years, you need to be married, have children, and be at home." And I said, "Okay, this is the second time I'm going through this, so I have it now." I said, "Fine. I'm hired, right?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Thank you very much. Let's put a bet that in 5 years, I may be married, I may have children, but I will be sitting in your chair. Let's see where that takes us." Actually, we became, I left the company because I didn't want his chair. I wanted to move on. I wanted to be a head of shipping in a bank at that point. So in 5 years, I knocked on his door and said, "I don't want your chair anymore. I am moving on." So he became my best friend, my best mentor. For those first 5 years, he was dropping me in the middle of the ocean into the deepest end of any project, and I would come out swimming and not even, breathing hard. But I put in very long hours, very big dedication, but I was learning. So what kept inspiring me was him. In 5 years, he said, when I knocked on his door and said, "I don't want your chair anymore. I'm getting married, by the way," I told him, "but I don't want your chair. I'm moving on." He supported me. He kept next to me all the time. And through this process where I went into the banking, I built up 2 banking portfolios as a woman in Greece, and then jumped into the advisory. Every male colleague I had, somehow I became very good friends, and they became my mentors, and I kept going up. So I consider myself very fortunate on that. It's rare, okay? But I think I won it, I earned it with very big dedication, very, very hard work, long hours, but balancing everything somehow. So that's it. I'm finished with that now, so I'm very happy I managed it. And one last thing, and I think Despina can say that as well as women. As I said, when I did it alone with the kids, when they were young,
And well, I think it's well, if you want, we are speaking about our qualities, what brought us to be on this level, and I think there are also a lot of feelings that are well, inside of everyone, when you're afraid, when you are coming to this sea level, it's also something which, well, you wanted, but at the same time you think, oh, and when and what, and that's why I think there are, for example, I have this second profession of me, linguistics, yes, and I was mostly afraid to go as a teacher for the first time in the class, because it is a very special thing when you see 30 children before you and you have to be everything for them. And after that, you are not afraid of, you are afraid of nothing. You see, because this is a special thing. Being, well, a teacher is in life is an actor, a person, a philosopher. It's well, everything. So for me, it's also this development of character. When I came to Berlin as the wife of the ambassador, I was not afraid, because after my life, well, 2 years I think I was at school, but it was life, a large life that I had. So and now with our foundation, this is Association, Independent Association, New Generation Russia, Germany, and there are young people between 25 and 40, and I insist that's the most interesting period in our lives, because you are just out of the university. Maybe you are already in our modern life in the 21st century, you are already having your own startup, or standing with both feet in your business life or cultural life, I don't know. And it is the possibility to bring them also the possibilities of leadership in life, because they are studying in this small world of two countries, Germany and Russia, to be a leader and to know how much it depends on every person, that every person is very important for this new technological way, society that we are having now. And well, that's it. And to be, well, as I said already, it is also a certain thing. I come now from a very interesting conference in Munich. 3 days it is. Today is the last day. DLD. It is a large digital conference. A lot of young people, and not very young, from all over the world, with their small and large societies. And it is optimism and courage, the motto of it. And it's also for us the optimism and courage. And there it was said, we are connecting. We are. Everybody is saying we are connected. We are here connected. We are there connected. But to be a leader, you have to learn to disconnect, to come to your own wisdom. And this is a very important thing to understand.
Thank you very much, Mary. How about you, Anne?
Can I say something?
Yes,
Because
yes.
leadership is very important for us, because when you have to deal with masters and chief engineers, you know, who are sailing around the world, I mean, you have to be a leadership, because you could be an excellent master in navigation and everything, but not a good leader. And we've seen cases like that. So I think leadership is you have it or you don't have it. That's what I believe. You might have it a little bit and you have to be trained, but you might not have it at all.
You mentioned before that you went to the vessels and you went to see how they live.
Exactly.
And tell us about that.
So let me tell you, the good masters or chief engineers, right, who are good leaders, you see a smooth vessel. Everything is moving smoothly, right? No problems with the crew, which is very important, right? Not to have problems with your crew, with the charters, with everybody, with the office, okay? But if you're not a good leader, you can create a lot of problems on board. okay? Because don't forget, you're dealing with humans. And the vessel is a very small society with people being away from their home in the middle of nowhere, and let's say they might not reach a port for like 40 days, and you know that, Katerina. So if you're not a good leader, and if you don't have a good psychology, you cannot control your people. We see a lot of cases, generally, not only our company, generally, right, that if you're not a good leader, the whole vessel is a big problem. There are vessels, you don't even hear them. The master goes on board, or the chief engineer, even the bosun, who is the guy that gives the orders to the ABs, to the able seafarer, what to do with their duties. If he's not good in doing that, then the whole vessel is a mess. So that's why I think I've met a lot of people, so I can say that, okay? Because I'm really, I'm dealing with 2,500 people. I do believe that I have the experience to say that. So that you see, a lot of people, they need push, they need training to become leaders. They don't understand that you have to make one step back, look at the problem, put yourself in their shoe, and then take the decision. You know what I'm saying? But this needs, that's why I said, I think, I'm not God, right? I'm just saying my opinion, is you have to have it.
Yes.
You can build it, but somebody who cannot be a leader, I don't see how you can train him. So I think you must have it in you a bit.
He would be then neurotic afterwards.
It's very true. And how about you, Souleïma? How do you deal with that? In blockchain where everyone wants to, there's not a corporate culture, everyone's on their own. How do you deal with that leadership?
Decentralization is a new corporate culture, actually. We're building it every day. But I think what's important is, I haven't been mentored as you, but I have managed to benefit from a lot of people who were supporting me. And it's very important to be in a position when you can receive positive feedback. It's often difficult to do. Negative is much more often shared. Positive is rarely shared. And on top of that, when you receive it, you tend not to listen to it. So I didn't have one person, but I had a lot of people supporting me, and I was able to get this support and build on it. So one very important point. Another one was to ask for help or to use my network on an everyday basis. When, I don't know how you are, but when you manage everything in your life, I hate asking for help. I hate asking questions. I hate saying this, I don't know how to do it. And very important to be able to do that with people who you know very well and who are in your comfort zone and who will always be there to help you. That's an important one too. And obviously being that comfort zone for a lot of people is also very helpful. Giving back helps a lot too.
Giving back, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. How about you, Aleksandra?
My story is, I guess, a little bit similar to what some of the other ladies on the panel have said. So I also, a strong mentor in my life was also a man. When I was 20 years old, I was finishing my master's at Oxford, which has its own sort of male-dominated culture, so there was already a little bit of elbowing that had to happen there. But then I knew that I wanted to be in the policy space, and my family is not a political family, not a DC family, so I had to figure out how to do that. So I did my research, and I spotted in the course at the time he was the Undersecretary for Energy in the U.S., and I liked his background. He looked like a friendly man, so I just sent him an email, a cold email, and he very kindly replied back. And over the years, from then until now, he's really guided me, but guided me in the sense of also just throwing me in the deep end.
Yeah.
So we would go there in DC, there are many of these clubs where everyone, yes, Senator, how are you, Senator, so on and so forth. And I was a 20-year-old girl. I definitely was not in the yes, Senator category. But you have to learn, and you have to learn very quickly. And in that process, I learned a lot about myself, when I'm comfortable speaking up and when I'm better sitting back, maybe, and observing the conversation, and then also learning how to engage and instigate with people who, at the time, were on a level at which I certainly wasn't. And I think to the point of role models as well, I think what we're doing here is very important, because I think a lot of times when we think about or conceive of role models, there's a tendency to think about the finished product. So you see the successful female CEO, the successful female parliamentarian, and there's, I think, a little bit less attention paid to the journey that it's taken women to get to that point. And it's oftentimes probably not a very glamorous story, so it might detract some. But I think there's a lot of value in having these kind of conversations to show women what it takes to get to the top, and rather than just seeing the final product on the shelf.
Thank you very much. Also, something that you mentioned that is very important is to be bold, because I mean, you sent an email, not fearing the response, not fearing failure.
Yeah.
And sometimes as women, we need to make an extra effort to take that boldness.
Yeah, I had a very good friend when I was young, also a young boy, and I think we were very young, and he was a very courageous kind of boy, and it sticks with my head because he always said, the worst thing that can happen is that they'll say no.
Yep.
So that's kind of the mentality. The worst thing that happens is that there's no
you will
reply.
never know until you ask.
Exactly. So I think.
So don't argue the point against yourself. Just ask.
Exactly. So being bold, I think, is very important as well.
Thank you.
I have a very similar story of being bold. When I first put myself forward for an election on the board of directors of the Cyprus Shipping Chamber, it was the first time that a woman ever was nominated in the 25 years of the Chamber's history. And I got a call from someone in the industry telling me, "What are you doing? You're going to embarrass yourself." So we were 11 people standing up for election with 10 positions open, and I made it. And someone who was coming from a very prominent company didn't. But my reaction to him was, you know what, it's an election. Some people will win, some people will lose. Why am I embarrassing myself? I understand that perhaps I was also a bit younger, so perhaps it was not realizing the danger of doing that. But that is something that can deter not only women, but younger people to seek for, positions that they may aspire to. When it comes to mentorship and role models, I have to say I never had a role model in business growing up because there weren't that many women in my part of the business, Now we're more. So I think that's one good thing. We have more women role models now, and this is what we're trying to promote. When it comes to mentorship, I also had male mentors. One was my dad. He was in the industry, and I learned my work ethic from him. And the other was someone who's now my friend, and he told me the politics and the strategy and the lobbying behind being a business leader, which it takes a lot. But they were never officially my mentors. You just observe and learn. And I think it's very important to note that, a mentor can be a man or a woman, and it doesn't matter. And quite frankly, we need men to be mentors to women and to younger men, showing them, that having a more gender-balanced working environment is to the benefit of everyone. And we're in society together, men and women, so we cannot bring effective change and long-lasting change if we don't cooperate on that, if, half of the population is not on board.
And vice versa.
And vice versa, yeah, of course.
Can I say that,
Yes.
that as mentor, when I said I had mentors, they weren't official mentors. They were supporters, because now we have to put a tag that you have a mentor. You need to have supporters, and you need to ask for the help. You need to put yourself forward for asking and being bold for taking what you want or what you think you deserve.
Yes, I mean, it's amazing how, according to Lean Organization, men jump and make a decision when they have 40% of the requisites, when women wait until they have 100% of the requisites to jump. So sometimes we just have to jump without knowing where we're going, because that's the only way to really push a career. No? So I want to ask you, if you have to say something, just one piece of advice for a younger woman that wants to keep advancing their career, why would that be, that very important piece of advice that you would say this younger woman to survive and to thrive?
Me? Yes. Well, I'll go back to my first comment. Success is not about gender. It's about character and about wanting it. And I would say, I would remind, a younger woman or my younger self that they have the right to go after what they want. Yeah. I know it's more difficult sometimes for women, but still, it's difficult for everyone. It's difficult for all the young people, so they should never give up. I would also say continue your education. That's very important. I'm still studying, and people are asking me, why are you doing it? And I believe that I have some ideas of how I want to progress my career, and I believe that the master's degree I'm doing now will help me do that. So I would say that continue your education, always be on top of your industry, know the updates, know the latest innovations, be a step forward. Because that's the only way that people are going to take you seriously and people will want to listen to you. And lastly, I would say have ambition and not be afraid to have it. I think sometimes we associate the word ambition in a negative way together with women, and we shouldn't be doing that. Have ambition, because that's the only way you're going to have forward. You go forward. If you don't have a plan, or you don't know where you're getting to, then how are you even going to do it?
Thank you. How about you, Aleksandra? I would echo the point on education very strongly, I think, developing a habit of lifelong learning, because leadership, and we've thrown the word a lot around on the panel, but leadership isn't just the title or the power that comes with it. There are actually qualities that entails. And I think developing those qualities, that also entails a lot of different kinds of knowledge. So knowing your industry and being on top of your industry, but I think also knowing other fields, knowing politics, philosophy, religion, whatever it might be, especially as our world starts to become or is becoming more horizontal and networked. Engaging with the world, both past, history, and present, I think that helps to make better decisions, to foster and build stronger relations, and to also communicate better. So education, but in a very holistic sense. And also to the earlier point, and you mentioned something very important when you said that in your industry, we're dealing with people. So education, that's also emotional intelligence, and really taking time to hone that as well. So my advice would be education and re-education. Thank you. Andy?
Okay, I would give the same advice that I would give to any man also. So I cannot say, what would I say to a woman and to a man? I would say exactly the same thing. I would say, put passion in what you're doing, be persistent, be patient, training. Try to learn from the others, from the mistakes of the others. Listen and learn to listen. What I see from my experience, a lot of people don't listen. So that's what I would say. Listen and be passionate for what you're doing and patient. Nothing can happen overnight. They say Pisa, Italy, it took I don't know how many ages to be built. So things do not happen overnight. And when you're impatient, you will never be good. This is my advice.
Thank you, Andy. Now, what piece of advice?
I fully support everything that has been said. I would just add two little things. Think out of the box, very important.
Right.
And we are multidimensional, so it's maybe easier for us to do that. And take risks, very important to take risks. What is the biggest risk you take is having a no, maybe.
Yeah.
So please do.
Thank you. Mary?
Yeah, I come back to the word ambition, because I think it's, a very important word, but most of people are ambitious, but then you just have to have this persistence and power to become what you want. But at the same time, you have to just know absolutely for sure whether you want it. Mm-hmm. So you just come back a little bit and think it over, and maybe take time for yourself and to have visions, whether your vision of your life is just what you really want.
That's very important.
If I just may add something that I forgot before, and you made me think about it, don't feel guilty. That's very important. In my case, it's always the school who calls me. The school, I have never been to the school of my kids, but they always call me when my kids are sick. I don't feel guilty, that's life. They call moms, that's all.
Yeah. And I just also want to say a few words. I think if you know what you want, it is very nice to have somebody with whom you could exchange ideas. Mm-hmm. And that's why I think the new labs for young people, which are now made, the techno labs, it's also the possibility to be in the same revier where you can just think it over and, oh, okay, maybe this is the startup I want.
Very interesting. You know, you have to really see if what you think you want is really what you want, you know, because you fight so hard to get somewhere and then you're like, I didn't want it.
I didn't want that. I want to echo everything, all points, and one more. Do not, and first of all, not just to a woman or a man. It's the same thing for everybody. There's no difference there when you start off. Don't be afraid to fail.
Yeah.
When you reach for the stars, you're going to find a few loopholes on the road. So
it's life.
That's life. So don't be afraid to fail. Do not be discouraged by difficulties. Take them positively. So if we take all the toxic, as you said, negatively inside of us, we don't do anything. Turn it positive. So turn your failure to a positive effect. Learn from that and move on. Do not feel guilty that something didn't happen. Just keep moving and make it better. And patience, yes, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. But that's life, so is business. So every day, it's a marathon.
Thank you very much. What would be your piece of advice?
Well,
Everything.
I probably have very little to add. So I guess lots of times when we talk to young people, they end up not knowing what they want. So my advice would be keep an open mind. Once you know it, go for it, you can do it.
Yeah, and be passionate once you find it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Passion.
Keyword.
So, you know, a lot of women would naturally tend to become entrepreneurs, not to have to deal with this imbalance between the personal life and the professional life. Nonetheless, it's very hard for women entrepreneurs to go there and ask for the money and get a yes from private equity firms or venture capital firms, because the majority of them are white male dominated, and it's very hard for them to understand many of the leadership styles that we as women have. Can you please elaborate on this?
Well, we actually seen lots of successes in China. I think Huren has this survey, or statistics, that they list all the entrepreneurs who self-made billionaires, and then probably 6 out of 10 are coming from China. So you just need to go try, and then once they see good examples, and then they probably will be convinced, and then women will get a chance to make money. At least in the asset management industry, we do see a lot more Chinese women taking the portfolio management job and then doing well and then competing with the men. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Well, in my experience with finance, although I've seen the statistics about women not being able to get access that easily as men, my experience in the finance sector is that the private equities, the banks, the financiers, the private investors will put their money in if they're inspired by what you are pitching to them. So if it is a good idea, and if you're passionate about it, because it may be a man pitching and still not get the money. So it is dependent, in my opinion, on the idea, how sustainable it can be, and how passionate you are that you can prove that you can take this forward. Then investors and money will find you or will believe in you. It's not easy, especially in today's environment where there are a lot of liquidity strains for banking, from banks and from PE funds, and returns have to be made. So it is more dependent on the idea and your passion about what you're starting to do, and having done your research correctly and in depth to prove that what you have thought about and what you're about to endeavor on, you've based it, and you can say, this is my idea and it fits into this segment, and it will fit this need of everybody because it's missing, because A, B, and C. So it is very much dependent on the idea and your passion and your correct preparation.
Thank you very much. Mary?
Yes, I think absolutely right, and I would say maybe that you have to be very insistent.
Yes.
So it's just, if it's the first no.
Don't tell me no, tell me how.
Yeah.
So what didn't you like?
Absolutely.
I'll change
And
it.
Yes, I change it a little bit and just look at it once more. And this insistency helps sometimes in business a lot.
Yes.
And maybe just also a little bit changing and coming from another door.
Exactly. Flexible. Find the way.
Yes, and this is the flexibility of women.
Yes, women can be very flexible. I'm not sure in those surveys if the reason that it's women that have not gotten the funds, it is actually based on gender or the idea or the feasibility of the project.
Some say that it has to do because men are the decision makers, and some of the companies that are started by women, they don't really understand them. And that happened also to the founders of Spanx, who now is a billionaire, a self-made billionaire and a very successful woman. She said it was very hard for her to get money from men because they couldn't understand the need to wear Spanx, So there are a lot of things in the cosmetics industry or in many industries that it's hard for men to understand. So you need a woman to speak to other women sometimes,
Probably, but it's also, like Maria said, you need to be flexible and try to speak to what they understand. So when we pitch an idea, it's not how we see it. We have to make sure that our audience understands it. So we're pitching to what they're understanding. So if somebody's not understanding the importance of me wearing mascara, okay, fine. A man probably won't, but of course he likes the outcome. So start thinking of how he sees it and pitch the need that way. So I'm not sure if it's pitched correctly or is it gender related. My personal opinion is it's not exactly gender related, but it may be the project or the pitch.
Thank you.
I don't often say that, but in this time I really agree. I don't think it's gender related.
Thank you.
I've been through this all over the course of last year. So Komgo was created after a full year of 6 months of raising funds, and I am backed today by 10 big banks. So I have Citibank, MUFG, BNP, SocGen, all the big usual suspects in the commodities industry, and 5 corporates. Shell is a shareholder, Mercuria, Gunvor, Coke, the Americans, and SGS, the TIC company. So I've been through this exercise over the course of last year, and it's a question of convincing. I mean, everything we mentioned before: hardworking, convincing, spending a lot of time networking, believing, asking questions, don't being afraid of having a no, coming back when you have a no with another idea. How can I do it? I mean, it's a mixture of that. And when you have a good project, I don't think gender is an issue. And even the other way around, I'm sure all those guys are very proud to have invested in this company because I'm the one leading it today and because I'm a woman, definitely.
Investors are looking for returns. They're not looking at the gender who's going to bring them the returns. It's bottom line driven, so.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, basically you have covered me, Katerina. Thank you very much. I'm not a finance person, okay? I'm a people's person. So, and I fully agree with you. The only thing I want to add here, so it's not a matter of gender, okay? I mean, come on, we cannot say everything is gender in this life. So the one thing I would like to add is, according to the ILO, which is the International Labour Organization report in March 2018, The Future of Work, a literature review. I'm sorry I'm reading because otherwise I'll forget it. The global increase in the share of older people result in a decline of the growth rate of the potential labor force. In addition, rising educational attainment and longer school careers will also continue to lower participation rates among young people, especially in emerging and developing countries where youth participation rates are currently still very high. Thank you.
Thank you. Aleksandra?
I agree that it's not a gender issue. In the U.S. financial and policy world, though, there still is, I think, in the VC, the venture capital community, there's a bit of an idea of fit and what is a good investor fit. So in the U.S. still, you see, at least until I think it was 2013, 95% of all VC funding was going to firms where the CEO was a male. So maybe it's our problem, not everybody else. But I think one interesting way, and something that I've seen being implemented to not only in terms of funding, but also hiring and kind of removing that kind of idea of gender bias or flipped. It's actually an example that was taken from the music industry. Until about the 1970s, most orchestras were male-dominated, and then many orchestras worldwide started hosting blind auditions. And in the context of those blind auditions, the number of women who were moving beyond the first, second, third round increased by about 50–60%. So a little bit in the policy world, what I've seen starting to happen are blind resumes or blind work sample, where if that is a problem, you're removing at least that gender bias or an idea of fit. No, there's in the policy world.
Gender-neutral ads.
Exactly. No,
job
there's still.
description. Gender-neutral job description.
Exactly, yeah, voila. So that's something potentially constructive that could be implemented, and I think it depends on companies and sectors, but
You're right.
it's potentially
Shall I say
forward.
this?
You want to say something?
Yes, may I add that the European Commission and WISTA is on Platform for Change within the Diversity Committee of the European Commission. One of the efforts they're trying to do, and it has to be implemented legalistically, first of all, is gender-neutral job descriptions,
Yeah,
first of all, and gender-neutral assessment
Yeah.
of successes. So it's two ways. It has to come through government, of course, all right? So some people need the law, but we also need to build it within society and each company on its own for corporate culture.
Yeah.
The understanding. The understanding.
To the
Sorry.
understanding, yes.
Yeah, I agree. Finally, tell us.
I think I disagree. I think it is a problem, and it's an underreported problem. There's this online magazine called The Entrepreneur Magazine, and they ran a survey about a year ago. And what they found was that women with young startups or owning their own companies, they were less successful than men applying for a loan, let's say, for $100,000 US or more. And the results were, I think 28% of men were successful and 15% of women. So you can see it's difficult for anyone. It's a difficult task anyway, but it's even more difficult for women, and that makes it harder for them to hire staff, to rent office space. It makes their business more difficult. Some of you are in the finance sector, so you've given some very good answers. I will give an alternative answer. Within our industry, at least, we've seen lately investors pushing companies to be more environmentally friendly. They have asked for proof. We have seen of companies that had some accidents on the environment side, and the investors were ready to pull out unless there was a plan. So we see now investors are more interested in or more concerned with the society's opinion. Diversity is one of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, so I think that's an opportunity to start pushing financial investors towards that as well, trying to explain the business benefits of helping a woman or investing in a female-led company, and also promoting them, why not, if they have taken that step.
That is very important. You know, now today the World Bank and IFC, if you're not pushing for objective number 5, that's the one that's taking away gender discrimination, they won't invest in you. They won't lend you money. So it has to be a public-private partnership to really make a difference.
Exactly.
So, well, many experts expect that the implementation of artificial intelligence, robotics, and other digital innovations would release some labor force and increase unemployment rates. This automation trend is especially challenging for women because they tend to be employed in more routine tasks than men across all sectors and across all occupations. New IMF research estimates that 26 million women jobs in 30 countries are at a high risk of being displaced by technology in the next 20 years. This means 180 million women's jobs globally. How is this situation affecting gender equality, and what practical solution do you suggest to tackle the problematic? Start here.
Well, this is
I would say this is not a gender problem. With the technology developing, we're going to have less jobs for everybody. And what we see, I mean, some countries started doing is sort of a retraining people. Some of the jobs taken away by the robots, maybe you should have freed the men, right? And then they could do something more interesting, or, I mean, where other places are needed. There might be service-related things, and there might be more creative things, or entertainment. People probably end up entertaining each other more. That's sort of my advice. I guess another point would be, actually, I would say technology will help women in lots of sense. For example, we might have the robots doing the housework, and then the women can work more on other things she's interested as well. And then previously we talked about telecommunication, and then things we can exchange ideas more freely and easily, much than before. So I would say, we should embrace technologies more.
Interesting. Over here.
Well, I can only speak about the shipping industry, okay? I believe technology is going to be helpful to women and not detrimental. Because shipping was male-dominated, because it was considered that men were needed for a more difficult job or a more strengthening job or whatever. So technology is now taking that part away and allowing women to be more inclusive in other ways. But it's also taking out the jobs of men, technology. So I think it is helping to level out the playing field a little bit. So at least in shipping, we see it as an opportunity, or I feel it is an opportunity, rather than a detriment to jobs within the industry. And I like your idea, having a robot at home. Yep, very much. It'll definitely help.
Well, I think, of course, it's a complicated problem, but for example, for women who have already their professions in their hand, it helps because there are so many who are working now at home, and for women it's the most important thing because they are shifting like this, and they can have family organized, children organized, then they just go somewhere to a conference as you did, and being connected to the family through technology, and coming back to labor things. Well, the global unemployment rate is now very low, as during the last decade, and for almost much more it is in the wealthiest countries of our world. And there's a new word now, STEM. If you know what it means, it is science, technology, engineering, and math. And the positions in this STEM are just there. Take them. That's a problem. For example, I have this thing in India, the shortage of skilled STEM talent doubled from 2014 to 2018. And the US Bureau of Labor Statistics estimates the rate of growth for STEM positions is quadruple that of other jobs. So we can estimate that about 1 million to 2.5 million jobs are just lying for us now till 2020. But of course, those are not the normal jobs, they're STEM jobs. That means that, the world is changing, so the education is changing. And if you just look at a person who is maybe 60, 70 and doesn't know how to deal with iPhone, but you take a 5-year-old girl or boy, it knows how to do it. So it's our new way of dealing with the challenges of the technological world. And if we do it correctly, and I'm absolutely sure that's the problem. For example, in the Soviet Union, one of the most popular professions was engineer. And we had a lot of engineers and beautiful education with math and physics and so on. But after perestroika in the 90s, everybody wanted to go into law sector, to be a businessman. So the engineering came down. And that's a problem also in Germany, where we are now. So it's also the same problem. They have a lot of engineers, but not enough. So this education has to be a little bit changed, and maybe it's also, if the girl with 7 knows that she needs it, she will do it.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Not much to add. It's clear that on the short run, it's a massive help for all of us, that's for sure, in our personal and business lives, no doubt. On the long run, obviously, we're facing what some people call the 4th industrial revolution. So a lot of things are currently being reinvented in terms of ways of working, especially in the service industry. So yes, need for massive education, creative people, and yes, it's a very complex new skills and new ways of doing things. So very complex question, but let's see.
Thank you, Andy.
Angie. Yeah. Oh, okay. I will also talk about shipping. International Chamber of Shipping, ICS, released new study conducted by the Hamburg School of Business Administration, HSBA, regarding the potential effects of autonomous ships. I will tell you where I'm leading at. On the role of seafarers in the global shipping industry. The study referred to the latest edition of the 5-year study of the manpower report conducted by the SES and BIMCO, and which was published in 2016, ICS and BIMCO 2016. According to this report, the forecast growth in the world merchant fleet over the next 10 years and its anticipated demand for seafarers will likely continue to trend of an overall shortage in the supply of officers. This is despite improved recruitment and training levels and reductions in officers. Wastage rates over the past 5 years. The report predicts a shortage of 147,000 officers in 2025, which is more than 18% of the global demand for officers on ships. The figures on this report shows clearly that those seafarers with higher qualifications will move into a very comfortable labor market situation where demand will strongly outstrip supply. The underlying analysis of BIMCO and ICS proposes that demand for officers will increase by around 10% every 5 years, while the supply remains relatively stagnant. And the fact that almost 20% undersupply of officers is objectively no reason to worry about job security. As described, even more optimistic scenarios suggest only a small number of hybrid, remote-controlled or automated ships in the next few years. Realistically, automated or semi-automated ships will be rather small, operated firstly in tightly controlled waters close to shores, and often be supported by remote control. Even in the most optimistic scenario, by 2020, in only 2 years' time, right? Somewhere around 100% ships will be operated autonomously. This has no effect on the job market. Autonomous ships are more likely to alter jobs than eliminate them. This, combined with the creation of new types of job, will lead to greater prosperity in the long run. So what I'm saying is training, 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 training.
Lifelong learning is the word.
Interestingly, Giacomo, last year, he mentioned that, with the surge of mixed reality and artificial intelligence and all this 4th industrial revolution thing, what we need to do, we cannot compete with computers. So what we need to do is to become more human, because computers cannot compete with our human side, with our creative side. So this will open an opportunity for the new generations to be more creative, to be more, not as a part of the cog in a system, but more as a, more humane ways of working. And in that same regard, I want to ask you, Aleksandra, what do you think, some people criticize the gig economy because, I mean, this trend is just starting. It will grow exponentially, but it's not giving social welfare to the employees. It's not giving access to healthcare and to many other things. What do you think about that? And how can public and private institutions work together to solve this problem?
Yeah, sure. No, it's a big challenge. I just like to circle back to the original question very quickly, if I may, and then I'll answer that one, because I think it's very interesting and also very complex, the issue of automation. And I think with automation and the fourth industrial revolution, it's a little bit like what we said earlier in terms of having it all. We can have it all, just not all at once. And I think automation is going to affect different parts of society, but also not all at once. So you can think of it in terms of waves, for instance. And in the first wave, it's of course going to be sort of the menial, repetitive tasks. Globally, women do tend to be concentrated in those a little bit more so than men. So perhaps women will be more affected in the first wave of automation, if you will. But then as you sort of start to go up the food chain, the automation food chain, eventually it will touch everybody. So perhaps just not all at once. And one of the ways of dealing with that, I think, is definitely STEM and education. And there are a lot of interesting public-private partnerships and other initiatives all over the world. Pakistan, for instance, is an example. They had a very successful ICT for girls program where they've set up learning centers throughout the country to which girls and young women could come to be trained up in those skills. And to the point about the gig economy, I think it's a huge challenge to which, unfortunately, I wish I had a silver bullet, but nobody really has a good answer, because I think we're still in that interesting phase where we're trying to figure out what exactly it's going to look like. It's a bit like the Gramsci saying, the old is dying and the new hasn't been born yet. So we have some idea, perhaps, of what it will be. It will be more decentralized. We'll be able to perhaps have more flexibility. So I think we're at the stage where the workforce is perhaps moving faster, and policy hasn't yet caught up with, one, understanding exactly the dynamics that are unfolding, what that means for future work, and what that means for policy. So a constructive way forward that's happening in many countries around the world now are in the tech sector, for instance, are referred to as regulatory sandboxes, where tech startups, be it in AI or whatever it might be, it's almost like a controlled experiment, effectively, between the company and the government, where there's a learning from the government side how far to go with, for instance, regulation, what kind of social protections does that particular company and then that particular industry need, and then vice versa from the private sector side, how can we constructively engage with and communicate the public sector space. So I think the jury is still out on what it will look like at the end, but we're in that learning and discovering period, and I think those regulatory sandboxes are hugely important for discovering the context of that.
Thank you very much. And lastly?
Going back to the first question, I will talk about our industry again. So I will say that there has been a recent report in the shipping and port industries that showed that menial tasks will disappear, but this will be replaced by jobs that require higher levels of training and higher levels of computer literacy. So many tasks in these areas, in the port and in the shipping operations, they have been traditionally labor heavy, therefore male dominated. So we believe that with this new change, as remote operations take over, as robotics take over, the new roles do not seem to have a gender bias attached to them. And this is really good for the women in the industry. And we see some of these jobs are promoted directly towards women, like port operations in Latin America. So what I would say, this is not about losing jobs, it's about training youngsters differently, it's about retraining the workforce responsibly, and it's about giving opportunities to everyone who deserves them. Now, if I will support what you said about the gig economy, and I will pose a question that maybe it's a question we don't want to hear, but can we have it all? Can we have can we work from home, have a better quality of life, and then have the health insurance that we want, and have all the benefits? I'm not sure if we can. Maybe in the future we will find a solution. And I agree. That's always the case. Policy, regulations, the law. Well, technology runs faster than that. So I do believe that at some point, regulation and law will catch up, and maybe that's where we will find the balance. But as you said, it's still to be seen.
Thank you very much. You know, I had some questions to the audience, but now I think it's a better idea to give your microphone, and you can ask directly.
The other way.
Good evening to you. My name is Raj Kumar. I'm the Vice Chancellor of Jindal Global University in India. I'm a law professor, and I've been fascinated by this panel. So I want to first of all thank Caspian Week for a visionary panel to start this conference in Davos. So it's been very inspiring to hear all of you. I've been also patiently waiting to hear the Me Too word, but in 2 hours we couldn't get that. So one of the important questions that I want to raise, both as a lawyer and as somebody who very strongly believes in issues surrounding diversity and accountability within organizations, it'll be useful for you to reflect about how the Me Too movement in general, but also the workplace environment within your organizations and institutions have shaped the way we need to develop a future workplace for women in general, but also more importantly to instill a sense of responsibility and respect within the organizational culture. You mentioned about culture emanating from the top. One of the things that the Me Too movement did is to move beyond legal forms of accountability that can create some sort of a better understanding and opportunities for a respectful, collegial, and a safer environment for women. So it'll be useful for you to reflect that. Thank you very much.
Someone wants to add to it?
Well, I think the Me Too movement was a very good start for discussion. And it was a very good start for discussing all the things you said about respecting the workplace, about equal rights, about women having the right, and they do have the right to, and also men, because let's face it, we should talk about both genders. We have heard of harassment case for both genders, that they have the right to go to their working place and feel safe and being able to be productive. Where I had some objection with the Me Too movement was that at some point I felt as a woman that it went too far. We got to the place where we were blaming men just for being men. So this is where I felt that it was a step over. But as a discussion, yes, I believe that it brought change. Certainly it has in our own industry, because before these things really, they were not discussed. But at least now, I think everyone is more aware of these issues. Everyone is more aware of their behavior, which is a fantastic thing. I think when we reach that point where everyone is aware of their behavior, then we will definitely have a better working place in general for everyone in all industries.
We have space for one more question.
My God.
Hi, my name is Irina, and I moved from Siberia to Los Angeles about 10 years ago, and now I'm running or managing, I'll have to say, about 35 projects, commercial development company, and about 100 men every day. So my question to you is, how do you separate and don't bring your work environment to your house and still manage to be feminine and, not to argue, not to fight with your men at home?
It's funny you asked this question, sorry to interrupt. What I noticed around this panel is that there's a very well mastering of all the egos here, which is something I must admit that you're very strong at, and brings a lot of strength to everything that has been said today, and it's a way of doing it.
It comes natural.
Yeah, it's natural. And I believe that women in the workforce do not need to lose their femininity. Yeah. I am a personal advocate of be yourself, okay? You can be successful by being yourself, not by adopting another person's or another gender's qualities. Build on your own, and you don't need to lose being feminine to become successful, to be able to be a manager and be heard, okay? It's a different leadership style to be able to motivate and be heard than being able to just impose, okay? We're way past that era.
Yeah.
I had some time in my early career, in my early years, where I totally lost it, where I gained a lot of weight. I was studying my master's. I was recently married. I couldn't handle it all, so I just gave myself to the ruin, you know. And it took me like 3 years